Hello everyone! This is our discussion video for Trails of Daybreak II. I went back and forth on whether or not we were going to do one of these. So as a result, this video is going to be a little weird. So here's the quick progression. I wasn't going to do one. Then, as we started up with the last few videos, there was some things people said that I wanted to respond to. And so then I was like, okay, I'll do like a short one. And then I started thinking, I'm like, well, I feel like I actually have some stuff I wanted to say, some thoughts I wanted to expand on, so maybe we'll do it a little bit longer. And then I started writing notes, but then I got bored or stopped for some reason, and that was like several days ago. And now I'm like, I need to record this video or else it's not going to get done. So now we're going to meet in the middle in that, like, I have some notes for the start of the video, but then after that we're going off the top of the dome piece. And then also about the post game for Daybreak 2. As you can probably guess, we're not doing that, and it's your fault. And I mean that like the collective you, because surprisingly, literally nobody told me there was a in-game before we beat the game. And then when the finale goes up, there were several comments that like, hey, are you not going to do the in-game? And I was like, what in-game, brother? I watched that shit. That's like 6 years ago, man. What in-game? But yeah, apparently there's some stuff in the garden, and if I had known about it ahead of time, which I mean, it is a catch-22, because I do say don't tell me shit, and I wish, I mean that for plot stuff, like don't tell me shit, because even the most minor stuff that's like, oh, it's in all the promotional stuff, I don't look at that, so I won't know about it if you don't tell me. Just reiterating that, because I've been told some stuff about the next game, even after specifically saying, don't tell me anything about it. But that was on a video that was before the finale went up, but that's beside the point. Because I didn't know about it, and like it's already been like 2 weeks since I finished the game, I just have no interest in like reinstalling the game and like doing like 6 or 7 floors of the garden. Because I did look that up, at least, like how long it was, and it's like 6 or 7 floors of the garden. I have no interest in that. At the end of the video, I was told there's like a cutscene I could watch, so I'll try and find that, and probably won't pull it up on video, because I'd just be like redoing, like basically stealing someone else's content, kind of. I mean, granted, it's a video of a cutscene, so how much ownership can you really collect? I don't know, I feel like it's in bad taste, personally. So we'll probably just do the thing I did for, I don't know, there's something else that we did where I just played the audio and reacted to it. So we'll probably do that. But first things first, let's actually talk about the topic at hand of Daybreak 2. This video is mostly going to be focused on my ideas for what I think the story in game could have been or should have been. Not so much on like the actual story we got, because I feel like I talked about that enough in the main Let's Play. The quick and, well, somewhat quick and dirty rundown of my thoughts on the overall game that we got. Act 1 is pretty good. Like, the Swin and Nadia Act 1 is, like, the game kind of peaked there, I feel. Like, it felt fairly different. I like Swin and Nadia, and even getting some, like, interactions with Elaine. I liked how, you know, Van wasn't really the main focus. I did like the overall split routes for the first 2 acts. I thought that's a cool idea that they should, you know, do more. Especially just, I mean, as I talked about all this in the main Let's Play, but like it helps for like the ever increasing party size to have it be like, hey, you know, you just have like 6 characters at a time or whatever. And usually the games are pretty good about that, at least at the start, where usually, even in games that don't have like the split routes, it's like for whatever reason, you only have access to like half of the party at the start of them. They've been like that since, I mean, going back to Sky pretty much. But yeah, I like that. The van acts I think were weaker. I just like, because I'm trying to even remember like the Messeldown plot. You're just looking for the part of the MacGuffin again, and then I don't know, it's I mean, I did kind of like the way Kid X is revealed. So, like, that was kind of good. But everything else was fine. Going into Act 2, basically the same thing, just weaker. Swin and Nadia's act 100% should have focused on the Calvardian Revolution. Like, they kind of should have somewhat beat you over the head with it, the way Erebonia did with the War of the Lions. That would maybe give the Auguste stuff slightly more impact, at least to the point that when Auguste is revealed as Auguste, instead of being like, who the hell is that? It would be more of a, oh, okay, that makes sense. We talked about him before. I know who this guy is. And I know something about his actual character and what he thought and his ideals, instead of him just saying, I have ideals, but not expanding on them in the slightest ever. That would be like a very minor, but we'll talk about the changes we would make. But that's something that felt like that should have been a slam dunk, because it 100% should have been focused on the Calvardian Revolution, like the class time and stuff at least. And then Van's Act 2, I don't know, it's kind of there. I feel like that's the most forgettable section of the game. Like, it's not as bad as any of the Act 3 stuff, but I really don't remember it very well. Oh yeah, that's the stuff with Sal and him wanting to make his own family and everyone getting mad at him when that's like the one time we shouldn't get mad at Sal. Of like, obviously, dude's fucking carrying Hayway on his back, apparently. Of course he deserves his own family. Even if that family is just Gao Long. Which, oh, that's poor roll there, brother. You might want to do a respec. Gotta be boring family dinners, for sure. Then getting into intermission. I'm gonna steal this, somebody else said this, but basically intermission feels like a post-game, like either like a post-game content update or a post-game like mini DLC. It's like completely disconnected from the main plot, and it feels like something that, like, if the setup was after the events of Daybreak 2, the gang decides to relax after receiving a mysterious invitation at a Myth Island. While enjoying their island vacay, you know, strange things that happen that vaguely set up the next plot line. That's what intermission or fragments or whatever it's called should have been. 100%. Or that's what it feels like. It's okay. You know, main criticism is that, like, the plot of the section relies on everyone in the party being complete and total idiots. Which is pretty weak, and the way it just overlaps with the upcoming Act 3, where the whole, and everyone, you gotta fight all your party members because they think you're a bad dude. We didn't need to do it twice, but I'll hold that more against Act 3, as we'll talk briefly. Act 3, pretty bad. Arguably the worst section in the entire series. Like, just from a pure plot standpoint. The main defense that I saw for Act 3 is that, like, even though it literally doesn't matter and you could 100% delete it from the game and it would not affect the plot in the slightest, is that, oh, well, there's good character development, to which I just don't agree. I think the character development is, aside from Leon, I think Leon is the only character that actually gets, like, some decent character development in that section. Everyone else is either, like, side development where it doesn't really, it's not really development. They're just, like, on the screen. Or it makes their characters actively worse, like Qasim. Qasim went from being vaguely annoying to, like, a genuinely hateable character at the end of Fairy's section. And not hateable in a good way. Because it's not like they're like, oh, Qasim shows his true colors as being, like, a person who doesn't give a shit about his sister, actually. All he cares about is, like, tradition. Instead, they paint that as, like, a good thing. And it's like, they'll eventually... He did the right thing by completely ignoring his sister and letting her have, like, a mental fucking collapse and letting Van deal with it. While he stood over there in the corner, not doing anything. And then plus the whole, I knew I was mind controlled and I bombed a civilian restaurant. But, you know, and I could have broke out of it any time. I knew I was doing the wrong thing, but I kept doing it anyway because, like, oh, it needed to happen. Fucking bullshit ass stupid. Because that one annoys me the most because it was, like, the one that had the most potential to be kind of good, where it really should have been a chance to flesh out Qasim's character and really get to the core of, like, the disconnect between him and Fairy, where, you know, instead of Qasim being the, you need to figure out what you're going to do with your life, kid, it's like him actually showing some, like, real emotional growth and vulnerability and, like, trying to help Van unbrainwash his sister and get through to her, but instead he doesn't do shit. But yeah, the other Act 3 stuff, like Ashen, like what did we get out of that? Nothing. The Maxim stuff was like way too goofy to take seriously. And then it just didn't make sense. It's like he talks to Yume and then immediately just gets a bomb and it's like, I'm gonna blow myself up to kill this guy. Like I don't buy that shit in the slightest. Like literally like within fucking minutes, he's like, I'm just gonna get a bomb and I'm gonna blow this dude up. And myself. Just silly. Because not even like a, oh, what if Yume's lying situation. Just like, what if you don't get the... Well, I guess they did say that he thought he had talked to the dude. So maybe we'll give him a slight pass there. But it's still just, it's out of character. It's completely out of character. And the main problem is it's too goofy. Like, it's just so goofy. But to try and tie this up, the biggest problem I have with Act 3 is that, like, they tried to go for this whole, like, it's totally not mind control, because, like, they're not being mind controlled, they just have their memories changed, and look how they're acting as if they just believe a certain thing, even if it's wrong, which kind of falls flat on its face, because the characters do not act the same, like, their personalities are very different. Barry is the best example, where, as I've said several times in the Let's Play, that she's like so unbelievably bloodthirsty and ready to kill Van and them because she thinks they're part of Almada, but like when we were actually fighting the Almada members, Fairy was nowhere near as aggressive. Even after they blew up the bomb, like her personality is completely different. You can't tell me it's not mind control. Because I mean that's an interesting-ish idea of like, oh, their personality isn't necessarily changed, it's just they believe a different thing, but that's not what they did at all. Trying to think, moving on to the finale. The epilogue is actually really good. That was, I guess, the high point of the game, or not the epilogue, but the finale. The Skull Festival was good, really fun. I liked how the actual ending dungeon was really short. I think the stuff with Dingo makes no fucking sense, but that's par for the course, I suppose. I'm really like, I was surprised that I was the only motherfucker that like thought it was kind of weird that Rufus just shows up and teleports Mario to the fucking time dimension literally as fake Dingo dies. Like I'm the only motherfucker that thought that was a little contrived, but you know, that's me, I guess. Trying to think, anything else? I think there was one other thing I wanted to mention, but I'm blanking on it now. Yeah, I don't know. I just feel like the whole last bit with Dingo didn't make any damn sense, which is what we're going to talk about now. How to make Daybreak 2 actually make sense. That took longer than that was supposed to take like 6 minutes. It took twice as long. That's how that shit goes, you know, partner. Because I didn't even have notes for that. My notes start here. Well, I guess final tagline. If I had to sum up Daybreak 2 in a short paragraph, it is an anime filler arc. And I don't mean that necessarily as a derogatory term. I think it just perfectly encapsulates what the game is, where it feels like it's something made by the B team that couldn't move the plot forward, but we had to put something out while we waited for the A team to actually get to do their shit. And that it really embodies that. It's got like some kind of neat-ish ideas that are not executed well and do not connect together very well. So like it's not the worst game in the series, and I wasn't really disappointed by it. Like I enjoyed my time with it for the most part. At least recording it. I think if I'd played it on my own, I would probably really not like it. But it's just they kind of threw a bunch of shit together, and some of the shit by itself could be good, but when it's combined with the other shit, it's just shit. To use a, you know, not that good, like it's basically, to use a slightly more elegant metaphor, the game is a brainstorming session. They had the meeting and they said, what should we make Daybreak 2 about? We have to put out a game real quick. because we can't do what we were originally going to do. We can't really move the plot forward. And everyone threw out a bunch of ideas, and instead of like picking one and focusing on it, they just said, all right, let's do all of them. And that's what Daybreak 2 is. So getting into the next section of my ideas for what the game should have been, to put on my editor hat. So I have three main ideas. One is a little bit pie in the sky because I think it would require the creation of like too many art assets to be really feasible for what the game is, which is, I mean, it's an anime filler arc. You got to work with what you got, and you can't really move the plot forward very much. Well, this wouldn't move the plot forward, which is why I think this idea would actually be really good. And I do have an idea of how you actually maybe could make it work without creating like a ton of new art assets, but we'll talk about that in a second. And then there's two other ideas that are basically like vanilla plus of the main plot storyline. So we'll go into my first idea and take a sip of the sauce real quick. So the first main idea is we get wacky with it. And so intro of the game, same basic setup. We're trying to get the 8th Genesis. So in the prologue, Van and friends, they meet back up after the, you know, vacation or whatever. Everyone, after their time apart, they get a hint on Almada's treasure and the 8th Genesis, and they go and you do like your prologue dungeon, and you get to the 8th Genesis, and as they get it, it starts to react with the other 7 Genesis, and then boom, it opens a time portal, and the gang is back in the year 1100 for the Calvardian Revolution, partner. And that would be the focus of the game, is let's flesh out the Calvardian Revolution the best way possible by having the party like kind of live it. Now, this would be like not like a closed time loop, like in the sense that like Van and friends are actually secretly instrumental to the revolution. It would be like a completely alternate universe that doesn't affect the main one. So you could even do things like a little bit differently than the way it goes down in the normal Calvert timeline. But like basically that would be the plot of the game, is Van and friends kind of early meet up in the burgeoning movements of the revolution, get to really flesh that out, and with like Sheena and Ulgar and Aramis and the other guy. And so then when the other guy ends up being evil, you could actually have his ideals and his falling out with Sheena and the other moderates like really fleshed out. And he could still be like a villain or like an antagonist, but not necessarily like a mustache twirling villain who just laughs maniacally, and I'm supposed to believe Swin bought into his shit for even a half second. But yeah, that would be like the problem there is that if you go back in time, like you don't have, like, how would you make it like work per se? Because it's 100 years in the past, so you like all their cities and whatnot. Like you could reuse the same locations, but you know, Messeldam 100 years prior would not look like the Messeldam of 1200. Well, Messeldam's not the best. What's the no? I'm thinking Arasion, because Messeldam was actually new, but. And like, how would you handle orbments and stuff and your like normal progression? Because in theory, orbments don't. I mean, I guess they kind of exist, because I don't know. The plot's a little like vague on the issue, because I guess in theory they existed back then, just not in the mass-produced format, and they were more just like normal magic. Because you know, you have like the ancient quartz you get in the CS games, which that's partially a gameplay thing, but also in like Sky, I'm pretty sure you can get quartz from one of the machines up in the Liber arc. So like they existed back then, but they were different or something. Like, I don't know. It doesn't necessarily need to be like fleshed out that much. I think the basic idea is that Epstein figured out a way to mass produce them, which is fine. Those are kind of some questions that you don't necessarily need to go into too much detail on. It's basically just magic and it works. Or that could be like maybe the explanation is that the gang and them use like runes or some sort of like orbment stand-in for your power progression. But then another idea I actually had that would make this work without having to create a bunch of new art assets is that they go in same basic setup of going to like an alternate timeline, but it would be a timeline where instead of the Calvardian Revolution happening in the year 1100, it happens in the year like 1200. And so like it would still be the same like characters of everything, like of Sheena and them, like same people, but just like time shifted 100 years into the present and like an alternate universe. And for whatever reason, you know, Van and them have to help the revolution come to its fruition. And so that way you would still basically get to reuse all your assets and everything and just kind of time shift it. Like, honestly, I don't necessarily think this is like a good idea, but it's something you could do, which is that like have Dante's be like the king, for instance, you know, in the time shifted sequence. No, Dante's, I wouldn't want him to be like the main antagonist or anything. Like it would still, because I think you can still do the Crimson Grindle stuff in this way, and I think it would actually work better because the setup is that the 8th Genesis takes them to this alternate timeline for the purposes of testing the party and also seeing them to witness, like focusing on this idea of like humanity's sin. Because essentially the setup would be, look at the Calvardian Revolution, the only like democratic revolution that Zemuri has had, as far as we know. A period of unbelievable ideals and optimism, and at the end of the day, they did not live up to their, you know, wishes and aspirations, whatever those may have been, right? It's kind of hard to tell because they don't really tell you anything about the revolution. You just kind of vaguely assume it's the French Revolution. That's really all you get. But I think that would be really interesting and tie into the whole like Auguste's fall from grace, where you see him as this like extremely idealistic like philosopher guy, and then see over time, over the course of the revolution, how his will and motives get corrupted and he becomes increasingly more and more okay with the use of violence to maintain his own perfect idea for Calvard, and like how his idealism gets crushed in a way. The same thing with like Sheena and them. Like maybe it's, you could approach it from the angle of they were also extremely idealistic, but ended up shifting to be more moderate when they were challenged with the difficulties of actually creating a functioning democratic state. And that could be like a focus of the disagreements between her faction and Auguste, where it's like, how democratic do we want the new nation to be? What do we do with the nobility? How are we going to format society? What should we do with the people who fought on the side of the nobility? How are we going to handle our foreign relations? You know, these are like legitimate things that you could like disagree on and not be a mustache twirling villain. And like how you could see these causing like real falling outs. But at the end of the day, both sides do what's best for the country. So that would be kind of my main idea. Like that would be the thesis, is that the Genesis is basically trying to showcase like, here's a situation where there was so much possibility, and what do we have 100 years later in the normal timeline? People are still fighting over ethnicity, right? Like Calvert is like basically like almost run by an Eastern mob. The president is hiding major super important information from the populace. There's like a rampant terrorism problem. Calvert is like increasingly isolating itself from the global community. So like there's all these problems, and maybe that could be like its point, right? That like humanity was so easily corrupted and that we didn't live up to our potential. I think that hits a lot better than in the main game, where it's like, humanity's sin is karma. I'm a big monster. Fight me. You know, it's an interesting idea. It's just not fleshed out well at all. And so that would be like the main idea, is kind of somewhat having the story reinforce that. So when it's revealed that the 8th Genesis is bad or whatever, it actually makes more sense. So that would be like the pie in the sky idea. The secondary ideas are basically kind of stuff I talked about in the main Let's Play, which is that you need to either focus on Auguste or focus on the Crimson Grindle. I think either in isolation could be interesting, but as a result, by trying to do both, neither hit. So we'll start with a Goose. Basically, I think Act 1 doesn't need to change. You could pretty much keep that the same. Act 2, major difference. Swin and Nadia super focused on like the Calvardian Revolution, letting us actually know some more about it and the major players and Auguste himself particularly. Van section I guess could probably be the same, or you could get rid of it. Honestly, I don't know. I mean, I guess it's slightly important for Sal going forward, but so that would be the main major change. And then going into Act 3, I honestly still think you could probably like get rid of Act 3. Because this is the one that I have like the least idea exactly of how to like if you're focusing it on a Goose, how do you approach the Act 3 and the different alternate timelines? I don't know. I think maybe have it be that he's using the Genesis, like the alternate timelines, instead of just randomly like, I'm gonna make Ashen evil because it's important to destabilizing the world or whatever nonsense he said. It's more he's trying to focus people in purpose for the coup. In that, like, in this situation, his character really would want to overthrow the government. Like, he's less interested in like going back to the past to get his head chopped off again. It's more, for whatever reason, I've been brought back to life after being in the clock, and for the last 50 years I've had to watch as my, you know, ideal of this perfect republic like basically be discarded, and he's kind of disgusted with the current state of Calvard. Like, particularly I think would have him focus on like the ethnic issues, like how he's like disgusted by that, and how Calvard still hasn't gotten over that shit in like 100 years after his death. And so basically he would be targeted mind controls on people that would be important for the coup, so that when that happens, it has the best chance of success. And he's trying to overthrow the government so that he can get back into power and make the perfect republic of virtue the way he wanted to do when he was alive. But he would still be coming from a place of like, I want to make the country better, just using not great means. I think that would, I don't really know exactly who would get mind control. Like, it could just be he's trying to get like strong people too. Like, maybe you could still have it be what's her name from Hercules and like Kilika, and maybe he, you know, does get Qasim or something, because I don't know why you'd want Qasim, but maybe he's got to fill out his Pokedex, so he has to catch him. You know what I'm talking about? Or something. And then ultimately you fight him, and it's at least a bit more fleshed out. I think you could even actually tie it in better to the Swin and Nadia stuff, where by making the Garden Master / Auguste not a guy who cackles maniacally about his ambitions and plans and schemes and machinations, him actually wanting to make the country better could either I think you can still keep the whole he calls himself Ace stuff, or you could, I think you can keep that just because of the connection to Swin and Nadia, but basically have it be he acts like Ace. So the idea that Swin / even potentially Nadia would like go along with him becomes way more believable when it's like, well, he's acting like Ace. We think he's Ace. We trust Ace. If he wants to overthrow the government because he thinks it's bad, I'm not going to go against him. Dude's my hero. That's way more believable than him being like an evil dude who constantly talks about how evil he is. And then Swin's like, oh, well, maybe. You never know. I know he doesn't act anything at all like the dude that I look up to. He actually acts in direct opposition to everything he stood for. But like, maybe. It just, I don't buy it. And I had another idea, but it escaped me. Oh yeah, I think it's something I mentioned in the main Let's Play too. But like, you could even connect it to like Like, maybe the idea that Calvard was not good at cracking down on the gardens, and, like, that's why there's such a thing in Calvard. Because, I mean, I guess they never directly confirmed they're based in Calvard, but that's kind of the implication. So maybe that gives Swin and Nadia a reason to actually have some beef with the current government. That, like, Calvard let all this shit go on underneath their noses, and because they were too busy and corrupt to do anything about it. They were too busy trying to oppress Crossbell. Like, you could even tie that into maybe one of a Goose beef with the current Calvardian, like, government. Is that, you know, he comes from being this, like, democratic revolution, and instead, what does Calvard do? Immediately start, you know, basically becoming a colonial power. Which, I mean, it's not like that's out of the norm per se, but I could see that being something that a revolutionary would not want. Like, instead of maybe trying to encourage a democratic government in Calvert or in Crossbell, we're trying to, like, you know, take them over. Because, oh, what if Arabonia, you know, and the clashes with Arabonia, could be stuff that he doesn't like. Like, just give him some real fucking, just give him anything. A Goose has, like, fucking 20 words devoted to him before he shows up. And that's, like, barely an exaggeration. It's ridiculous. So, alright, we'll put the Goose stuff to bed. That's my main basic outline for what the game should have done if we were going to focus on him. The next one is focusing on the Crimson Grindle, which I think the first two acts would basically play out the same. The main difference, you know, no Garden Master shows up at the end of Swin and Nadia's act. I don't know, you slightly tweak that, it's a little different, who cares? Is that at the end of Fragments, instead of... Well, no. I think you can still have Act 3 happen. It's just the differences in Act 3 would be that it's the Crimson Grindle and the 8th Genesis are focused on testing Van. Because there's a connection to Van there, because Van awoke the first Genesis, or was there when the first Genesis was awoken. So it's like fixated on him. Which is why it's like a copy of Van, right? With the whole Crimson Grindle thing. And essentially, and honestly, this would be kind of similar to Sky 3. But basically the idea is that the alternate timelines would be situation. Honestly, I think you could do like one alternate timeline where it's trying to test Van and maybe even like break him and compromise his ideals. So either you could go at it two ways. Each of the alternate timelines are trying to get Van to act in a way contrary to his own like personal beliefs and convictions. I can't really think of any examples off the top of my head. This is the part where not having any notes is coming in. But like basically trying to or another idea is that it's one alternate timeline where for whatever reason everyone's been brainwashed, like all their memories are changed, and instead of it being random side characters like Maxim, it's people like Elaine, maybe, like really focusing in on their already like insecurities towards Van and turning them against him. Like really combining that idea, because I do like the idea of, hey, you gotta fight your party members stuff. I just think it's overused and not executed very well in Daybreak 2. But like basically the idea is that Van would be like isolated and by himself, and the whole point is like trying to get him to break and like maybe give up on his old, I mean, trying to think how to phrase this. Like, it tries to isolate Van in order to bring out the worst in him, because it's trying, since it's focused on Van, it's trying to show that like anyone can be corrupted if they're put in the right situation. So, because I do have this idea, right, of my head of like Elaine trying to kill him, and it would be focused on like some of the already like insecurities there, where she does have real beef with Van, and they just kind of, they somewhat address it, but they're still like in the process of dancing around it. And so really having that come to the forefront in a way would be kind of interesting, where like Van has to come to terms with the fact that, I mean, he did abandon her, and he's never really treated it with the same level of severity that she does. And I think you could do it for other party members. I don't have like a good idea fleshed out in my head right now. I was more focused on the Auguste thing of how to make that work, but yeah, I think that would be the main idea. And then the kickers, of course, at the end, after Act 3, and you've conquered all the different timelines and scenarios or whatever meant to break Van, and he ends up maintaining his, you know, anime protagonist energy. Because, like, an idea is that I think it really should, as I interrupt myself, basically, is I think it would be, like, a good situation, like, use the alternate timelines to explore Van's own beliefs and convictions. Because one thing I do think the Daybreak games have not done very well at all is this idea of shades of gray, even though it's supposed to be like the main theme, is that the game has not done a good job of convincing me that Van isn't a goody two-shoes. Because he basically feels like a goody two-shoes like 99.9% of the time. He's just kind of more like, yeah, I'll help feed the orphans, but I'm not going to be super happy about it. Like, that's the kind of energy I get from Van. So he's not really any different than, like, previous protagonists in that regard. So, like, maybe it's more focused on putting him in situations, or maybe he has to do shit that he would, like, really maybe some slightly dark shit. Or he has to, something, I don't know. I can't think of any concrete ideas. But, maybe not, like, super dark, per se. But just, like, have him do some bad stuff. You know? And even if it is brushed off as like, well, it's in an alternate timeline, like just actually have him really grapple with something, like some sort of real moral dilemma. But yeah, so at the end they confront the 8th Genesis, and boom, it manifests as Evil Burgard, because I think that's a dope idea. You can have that one for free, Falcom. Evil Burgard, stigma'd up, potentially able to turn to the Gindle as well. And the explanation there would be that it's manifests as Burgard because it's like the person that's most important to Van, and the thing he has the deepest insecurities over. Like, you could connect it to this idea that he does feel bad about having attacked Burgard the one time he lost control. Alright, there was an interruption there, so I don't exactly remember what we were talking about. I'm pretty sure we were trying to wrap up, or somewhat trying to wrap up. Man, this video is very disjointed. Well, I think we were talking about Evil Burgard and how he'd pop up. And basically my idea is let's do Sky 3 again. But essentially, yeah, I mean, if you boil it down, it's just do Sky 3 again. But in my defense, Sky 3 is really good. So if you're going to copy something... Because, you know, honestly, I was thinking about this. Because it's been like a day, if I'm being completely honest. So I was thinking a little bit about some more stuff to say. But Sky 3 is like the ultimate anime filler arc. Like, ultimate as in like great. That's what this game should have been. Is it should have been Sky 3. Like, we didn't necessarily need to be trapped in the Martian Garden for the entire thing. But like, that is such a good example of how to do a game that doesn't directly move the plot forward. So if they just copied Sky 3, I think we would have gotten a better game. Now, it wouldn't have been as good as Sky 3 unless, I mean, they really nailed all the minor aspects, but you can't just copy something and it's got to be like a really good copy to actually be better. But being like slightly worse than Sky 3, that'd be great. That'd be way better than being slightly better than CS2. But yeah, I don't know. I think I was saying that Burgard shows up because it's basically a manifestation of frickin' Van's insecurities over having attacked him the one time. Which I think you could also tie that into, like, that's why he's not in the game, like, for a lore reason, is that maybe he does actually have to do some sort of, like, holy, like, purge, like I think, like, the idea that, like, that demonic influence is still in him, because, like, it directly wounded him. And especially now that he doesn't have his stigma, he has to go back to the church and get, like, basically rehab. And I think that could connect back into, like, making the Celeste and Leon thing stronger, in the sense that, like, Van would have, like, real guilt over that. But yeah, basically, Regard shows up, you fight him, and at the same time, it's kind of purging Van of, like, his regrets and, like, of his sin of letting the Demon Lord get control over him and allowing him to, like, hurt someone he cared about. And then that'd be, like, the end of the game or whatever. I guess just briefly, because I don't remember if I talked about it or not, but, like, my thoughts on the actual... Because, I mean, I did say I liked the overall final chapter. I didn't really care about Dingo coming back, if I'm being completely honest. I felt like Dingo was a better character when he was just, like, the one-off guy who you kind of liked, but then surprisingly got killed. I think his character worked, like, perfectly fine in that regard. And so coming back and being like, actually he got mind trapped in the cosmic cube, cosmic clock, and he's been the secret puppet master behind the whole thing, lost in the cosmic orbital net septium veins. It's just too much. The one positive thing I will say is that at least it does give his death some meaning, because, well, because, I mean, I did say this in the first game, but, like, Dingo's death doesn't really accomplish anything in Daybreak 1. So that's, I guess, the one benefit of, like, retconning into being C or whatever, is that gives his death, like, a little bit more meaning. Because essentially, in Daybreak 1, all Dingo does is he takes a picture of the nuke so that we know Almada did it, but we already knew Almada did that shit. So it didn't really accomplish anything. Like, he did a noble thing in the sense of, like, going out there to try and do something, but he doesn't really do anything. So I guess I get why they wanted to retcon it, to make it, like, have more, like, meaning to it, but also to connect. So in between this break, I did go ahead and watch the little epilogue post-game shit. I thought I was just good. There wasn't really, I couldn't find just, like, a raw video of the cutscene, so I just had to watch, like, someone's playthrough on mute. No offense. It's just, I can't just jump into somebody. I mean, I don't really watch Let's Plays much myself anymore, to begin with, and I can't just watch somebody's, like, fucking, I can't jump into that, you know? Like, 100+ hours into somebody's playthrough, so I just watched the cutscene on mute there, and we'll just talk about it because it was too long to try and apparently I didn't realize, so I guess there was a little bit more to the post game than I thought, because I kind of thought it was just, hey, you fight a bunch of random bosses in the garden and then there's, like, a cutscene at the end. So there's a little bit more to it than that, but that's also basically, I'm kind of glad I didn't do it, because me skimming through it did not seem very interesting. Like, there's some stuff in the garden in the book, and there's, like, a copy of a book, and the book is evil, but it's not the real book, and the book is summoning demons or something, and then you fight the boss of the first game again, but it's, like, a different, it's basically CS2, where they're like, hey, what if you fought the shadow thing again in the Reverie Corridor? So, meh. As for the little final cutscene after the fact, or just, you know, it refers to Van as a demon lord, and it's like, I'm the true demon lord, you're a fake demon lord. I don't know what to say about all that shit. Because the thing is, one thing I didn't like is that it's like, ooh, Dingo was communicating with Hamilton and is the fucking linchpin that's gonna save humanity. Like, it's just a little too much. It's, like, a little too much. Like, I mean, at least they kept him dead for now. The more important they make Dingo, the more certain I am this motherfucker is getting resurrected. Fire truck? You probably can't hear that, but that's like a Am I on fire? I didn't even know we had a fire truck around. I'm being completely honest. I don't know, it was a very, very loud fire truck going by. Completely destroyed my train of thought. But like, I don't know. I just like Dingleborn. He was like a normal fucking dude who like tried to do the right thing and like died. And it's like, that's sad. And that was it. But like turning him into the fucking cosmic mastermind who's apparently communicating with Hamilton to give her the secrets to stop the desertification or whatever's going on. And then Graham Hardy's taking us to the moon or whatever. Which I guess it's maybe they're setting up a situation where it is like Zamaria. Like there's two different opinions where Hamilton's like we should try and stop the desertification. And Graham Hart's like, no, the Septian veins are fucked. We need to go to the moon. You know, we gotta abandon the planet. Maybe that's what they're setting up, which... This is... What I'm about to say is 100% personal preference. I do not, like... mean this is, like, a real criticism, but, like, personally, I don't give a shit about space. Like, I don't really care about space. So, us going to space, potentially, does not do anything for me. If anything, like, the more modern the series gets, the slightly less I vibe with it. I mean, I already talked about this in the main Let's Play, but, like, I liked it more when the series was kind of, like, basically, like, original, like, early Final Fantasy tech. Where it's, like, mostly low tech, but, like, occasionally there's just some fucking wacky shit. It's like, yeah, they got airships. Yeah, I mean, I know they run around and whack people with swords and stuff. And, like, there's no electricity, but yeah, they got airships. What, do you think they're fucking stupid? You think they don't got airships? And even in, like, Sky 1, you know, I mean, the implementation of airships there kind of could be considered, like, equivalent to, like, Zeppelins, kind of. Or, you know, early flying machines. So it still wasn't necessarily, like, futuristic tech. But... I don't know. I mean, that's personal preference. I mean, a lot of people like sci-fi and whatnot. I mean, the series has always been a little sci-fi, but it's like sci-fi fantasy. That's not necessarily new per se, but I personally am not like a huge fan of it. But that's not like an objective, like not like a real criticism. That's just like a vibe-based thing. But yeah, I don't know, I just didn't vibe with fucking Dingo being the Crimson Grin. It's just silly. I just feel like it's kind of silly. And even just the explanation of like Dingo fucking because he died near a Genesis. And the Genesis, like, what? Wouldn't anyone who died near the Genesis get their consciousness? Oh god, don't give them ideas, man. Like, I feel like that's an explanation for like anyone who got killed in... Oh fuck, they're gonna bring everyone from Cray back, aren't they, man? That gives them the setup. They're like, oh, their fucking consciousness was stored in the 8th Genesis, and we're gonna... Oh no, please don't do it, man. I already did that shit in CS1 and I hated it. Maybe they won't. Yeah, I don't know. But yeah, I mean, to wrap things up, the cutscene at the... I'm kind of glad I didn't do the post game. It doesn't really seem worth it. There's a lot of floors, a lot of bosses to have to do. It would have, if I had gone ahead and like known about it ahead of time and done it like, because honestly I could have recorded it like the day I did the finale, because I still had some time to record. Or I could have at least done most of it then. Because it was like I had time that I could have recorded, but I didn't really, you know, I didn't have anything else to do because I didn't want to start Uda yet. So I was like, I want to be fresh for starting a new Let's Play. But I definitely could have like phoned in some Martian Garden in-game shit, so... In the future, don't tell me shit unless there's a secret fucking post-game dungeon that is impossible to know about. I don't even know, still, like, you have to, like, hit New Game Plus, and then for some reason, instead of doing a New Game Plus, it does something different. You're just supposed to know that, apparently. Or something like that. I don't know. Let's go ahead and call it, man. I don't know. Daybreak 2, it's fine. I'm cautiously optimistic about the next game. Because, like, I mean, I guess they're somewhat setting up that we're maybe going to do something with the desertification or something. That was another, like, is I feel like Daybreak 2 didn't even really do a good job of setting up the next game. You know, like, if we compare it to Sky 3, where Sky 3 is, like, you're fucking kind of somewhat hyped for Crossbell. Because you've got, like, just the general introduction of the area, but you've also got the kind of compelling plot hook of, like, Rin. You know Rin and fucking Joshua and Estelle are going over there, so you're like, ooh. You don't really get that same thing in this game. Like, there's not, like, a compelling, like, ooh, some shit's gonna go down. Or, like, I can't, like, I feel like I know what's gonna, like, I don't know. What's the word? Like, it's not a good hook at the end. I don't think anything else. Oh yeah, the thing with, like, Nina or whatever, like, just mentioning off the top of my... People mentioned that, you know, the Eschaton saint or whatever. Which, you know, when they said that, I'm like, that seems familiar, but the idea of it being eschatology, which... I know that word, I know what eschatology is, but relating eschaton to that didn't naturally occur in my head. So, you know, the idea of eschatology being the study of the end times... I mean, that's kind of neat. I do like that they did something. Like, I somewhat vibe with your explanation for Nina there, of her being like a special person who only shows up, I guess, when the world's about to end. And so, like, her having special powers is not... It feels like a little bit... Like, I don't know. It's hard to put into, like, explanations, but, like, the vibes are right. The vibes kind of fit. Compared to her being set up as, like, some secret fucking high-level church member, despite being a kid, essentially. But her being, like, a special fucking innately born different person, I can somewhat buy. But yeah, I guess we'll call it. I don't think there's too much else to say. To wrap things up, what they should have done, we should have gone back to the fucking past. 100%. Second best thing would be make a goose like a real character. And then third best thing is, I guess, focus a little bit more on the Crimson Grindle. But, like, even I just have such a vague idea of, like, what that would entail. The only thing is I can think of just a few ideas of, like, it focusing on trying to test Van. Maybe it's trying to get him to sin through either... you know, sending them to alternate timelines, or that's another thing. Maybe instead of doing the memory thing, and this is also a bit of a personal preference. I think the memory idea is good in theory, but they didn't execute it right. Like, if I bought that it was just their memories are being changed, not their personalities being somewhat overwritten. Because, like, you really telling me fucking I'm supposed to believe Rosette would just execute Van because of... Like, it's not in her character to do that shit. Like, the idea that her memories are tweaked, it's just, I don't buy it. Her personality, it's mind control. Is that maybe instead of doing mind control, have it be that you actually go to very slightly different alternate timelines where you're encountering, like basically different versions of the characters. The same thing with, I mean, I guess the same idea of what they did with Dingo and Zen and Kalika. Or maybe it's like versions of these characters from a different timeline. Like maybe it's Fairy where she did kill Ida, right? Like she was forced to mercy kill Ida and it messed with her brain. And that's why she's so much more bloodthirsty. Or, you know, Rosette where she never... I don't know, because we still don't really know Rosette's backstory, but you could maybe kind of start alluding to something there, like the idea that she became property of Marduk, and in that universe Marduk treated her even worse, or like, I mean, right now it seems like they mostly treat her okay. They don't treat her like a pure tool, but maybe in like an alternate version she treated as just like an expendable tool who's owned by the company, and that caused, you know, a different personality. Something like that. Just an idea. But yeah, we're gonna call it. This video is already longer than I wanted it to be. I don't know, man. Game's fine. It's like both fine. It's like both like a little disappointing and not that disappointing. It's like in this weird middle ground where I went into it with extremely low expectations, and it somewhat beat them, but at the same time, I do think it's very low, like a lot worse than everything else. Well, not a lot worse. I still think CS2 is a little bit worse. But those two are like, they're in a class of their own when it comes to the, like, there's a big, I don't know what the third worst game in the series is, but there's a big gap between Daybreak 2, CS2, and whatever that would be. But yeah, maybe, hopefully the next game will be a little bit less of a mess. Like plot-wise, like maybe they'll have things more thought out. But we'll see. We'll see together. And I guess it still doesn't have like a release day, right? I mean, granted it could, and I just don't ever pay attention. But I think Sky finally got one, right? It's like September. Which I'm still somewhat excited for the Sky remake. I mean, really, I'm more like, I want it to come out and do well so that Sky 2 gets remade, because that's what I care about. I am slightly worried that the translation might be a little ass, though. Because I did see the one little short English trailer they had. Like, I don't even know how long. It's probably been like a few weeks since this is going up, but even before I checked, I was like, I don't know, the dialogue seems slightly different. Like, just like the vibes were a little bit off. Like, it just felt like just slightly clunky. Apparently they did change it a little bit. Like, the original line, like, they mean the same thing, but they're just slightly clunkier. Like, the wording isn't quite as, like, I don't know, poetic's not really the right word, but it's an example of how, like, important quality localization actually is. Where it's like, you can say the exact same thing, but just using very slightly different words in a slightly different order can give it so much more personality. Which is why, like, every single, like, literal fucking accurate translation sounds like hot ass. When it comes to your, like, Puritan, I'm not gonna go on the full rant, but, like, your Puritan fucking weebs who don't even speak Japanese half the time are like, the translation, they changed the meaning. Oh, fucking woke, not. Those motherfuckers. And then, like, you see the more literal translation that would make them fucking, you know, jack themselves off. And it, like, reads like hot ass. Like, okay, for the record, I did not play Final Fantasy VII Remake, but apparently that when they went back and they changed the final line of the game to be more, like, accurate to the original script, and it sounds like garbage. Like, the literal translation is, like, has no poetic license whatsoever. But I don't know. We'll call it here for reals this time. That's good. At least we ended it on a little bit of energy, as opposed to just, the game's okay. But, you know, game is okay.